Hi, this is Wayne Mansfield. Welcome to my weekly talk about books, and today I'm going to talk about 4 different books. I've got them here on my bookshelf. We've got Finding the Next Steve Jobs with Nolan Bushnell. He's the guy who started Atari and is really the only person who ever employed Steve Jobs. Risky is the New Safe with Randy Gage. I might have spoken about that before, but I'm so keen on this book I bought half a dozen to give away. It's a fabulous book. Abundance by Peter Diamandis, and this stuff is fabulous. I'll talk a bit more about that. And another book which has got a terrible name for what it really is. It's by Tim Ferriss, and he's of the 4-Hour Workweek fame, and his new book's called The 4-Hour Chef, and really it's about a learning process. So let's have a look at these 4 books, and I highly recommend them all to you as they are ideas that will change the next couple of years on how you do things. So the first one is Finding the Next Steve Jobs, and really it's about encouraging people's innovation and creativity. And you might recall that I spoke in the past about one of the hardest books that I ever found to read was the biography of Steve Jobs, because I so much wanted to like everything about him, but he was a real piece of work as a person. You know, he wasn't a very nice guy. And this, in Nolan Bushnell's book, he talks about Steve and about Steve Wozniak, how they started Apple, how they worked at Atari, and it gives a whole different light onto what makes somebody like Steve Jobs a person who can change the world. He was a totally obsessed, a creative person who really thought only his opinion mattered. And that, according to Nolan, allowed him to create all these amazing things that are now the Apple Corporation. And to give you a bit of an idea, on Monday, which is a public holiday in Perth, Foundation Day for those of you looking, the first long weekend in June, I had cause to go to the Apple store in Perth. And it opened at 11 o'clock. And we had an appointment to see the Genius Bar because the mini iPad had stopped working perfectly. And there was easily 150, maybe 200 people waiting to get into the store when it opened at 11 o'clock. And any other store in the Perth city had a trickle of people, but the Apple store was full of people. An interesting thing happened. I've never seen it before. As the door opened and the customers walked in, the assembled 30 or 40 staff of Apple applauded the customers coming in. I've never seen that before. We had a bit of a problem with the iPad, explained that I tried everything I could find to fix it, and the young guy went off and said, I'll swap that for a new one. My wife said, Joanne said, is that what's going to happen? They're going to give me a new one? I said, that's how Apple is. So this book, Finding the Next Steve Jobs by Nolan Bushnell, will give you a bit of an insight into creatives and specifically what made Steve Jobs so different and what allowed him to create Apple. Really interesting bit there. People like Steve Jobs are hopeless as employees and bits and pieces. So when Apple went public, he got the sack, and Apple nearly died a death. And only when he was enticed back did Apple get to be the fabulous company that it is now. The second book I'm going to talk about is this one called Risky is the New Safe by Randy Gage. And in particular, it has about 20 pages at the end how Randy set about to become an authority and get people to talk about the creation of abundance. And it really is an interesting book, very, very easy read. And as I said, I find it will prepare you for the coming changes. So I've bought half a dozen to give to friends and say, look, if you're worried about what the future's like, have a look at this. And it talks about how we're preparing our young people for jobs that are just not going to exist in 20 years' time, or in 10 years' time, or maybe in 5 years' time. And you really need to have a look at this and take control of the future for yourself. So that's A Risk is the New Safe by Randy Gage. Now, this particular book is just extraordinary because this is the book Abundance by Peter Diamandis, and it talks about what's really happening in the future. Did you know that in the late 19th century, say 1850, there was a new metal that was so valuable that the king at the time in France killed the person who bought him this very valuable mineral because it was so shiny and so beautiful it was going to make gold nearly worthless. And this mineral threatened the system that was applying at the time. And so the way the king protected his fortune was to kill off the person who bought this amazing mineral to them. It was shiny and silver. Now it's everywhere. It's aluminium. It's cheaply produced. It's in everything we do. It's in our cars. It's in our cooking things. It's how the world changes. Abundance, and we just got more of it than we could possibly think about. If we had solar energy, for example, the amount of sun that comes to the world is 17 to 20 times more than is necessary to convert to what would do the whole of the world's energy if we could harness the sun's rays every day. It talks about this hysteria about genetically modified foods and saying how if we eat these foods we will somehow have real problems in moving forward. It talks about the first genetically modified food is the carrot, where the Dutch made it orange. Its real colour is purple. And yet no terrible things have happened about people eating orange carrots. So this particular book is a fabulous read, pretty hard going, but when you read this, all you can have is a particular excitement for the future. Another example from it, it was predicted that to sequence the genome, the body structure, it would take maybe 10 years of computing power. Eventually it took 13 months because somebody worked out how to do it better. And it's now possible to get your genetic structure done nearly instantly, except for the queue of things that are happening. So this particular book is just fabulous. It's about abundance. And if you've got, I'm a bit of the warm earth skeptic. I don't think that we're going to have a terrible, terrible time. At some point, people are worried about the world having 100 million people. We're heading towards 8 billion now, and there's still going to be plenty of things that can happen. So I recommend this one very strongly. And the last one is the Tim Ferriss book, and it is an amazing giant book. Now, I've got two of these. Interesting stuff. A guy called Joe Polish sent me an email and said, if you pay for the shipping of these 4 books, it was this one, that one, and another couple of other ones, if you pay for the shipping of that, I will send you the books for the cost of the shipping, if you will let me talk about something else. So the something else was to be a member of what's called his Genius Network. And I said, oh, well, I've read that book, and I've read that one, and I've read that one. And it says, even if you've read these books, get them and give them to somebody. And that's what I did. So this is a particularly fantastic book. Look at it. It's just beautifully illustrated. It's about how to learn. So it's a recipe for learning. Highly recommended by Tim Ferriss. So they're the 4 books for you. I highly commend them to you. Look forward to talking about books again. This is Wayne Mansfield saying, until then, power to you in your reading.